Hello everyone, I'm Emma Shweta from First MSc Microbiology. Today we are going to discuss about hematopoiesis. Hematopoiesis is a blood cell production. Hematopoiesis starts before birth and continues as a cycle throughout life. Hematopoiesis derived from two Greek words, hema, that means blood, poiesis, to make something. The process of making blood is known as hematopoiesis. It is also called as hemophilia, hematogenesis, and hemogenesis. Red blood cells are important for carrying blood from the lungs to the other parts of the cell. The production of red blood cells is called erythropoiesis. In white blood cells, help the body fight against the infections and support the immune system. Platelet cells assist with blood clotting. Hematopoiesis begins during the development within the embryo of an unborn child and continues throughout the lifespan as blood cells are continuously produced and replaced by the body. It is sometimes called primitive hematopoiesis. Hematopoiesis in the embryo produces only red blood cells that can provide developing organs with oxygen. At this stage in development, the yolk sac which nourishes the embryo until the placement is fully developed and control the hematopoiesis. As the embryo continues to develop, the hematopoiesis process moves to the liver, the spleen and the bone marrow and begins producing other types of blood cells. What blood cells get made during hematopoiesis? The blood is made up of more than 100 different cell types. Each type of these cell types fall into three broad categories. Your blood cells are the building blocks of your blood. Hematopoiesis includes the production of all blood cell types, including red blood cells, erythrocytes. Erythrocytes transport oxygen and hemoglobin throughout the body. White blood cells, that means leukocytes. These support the immune system. There are several different types of white blood cells such as lymphocytes, neutrophils, eosinophils, basophils and macrophages. And the platelets. These help the blood to clot. Red blood cells, also known as erythrocytes, deliver oxygen to the tissue in your body. Oxygen turns into energy and your tissue releases carbon dioxide. Your red blood cells also transport carbon dioxide to your lungs for you to exhale. Red blood cells are responsible for transporting oxygen from your lungs to your body's tissues. Your tissues produce energy with oxygen and release a waste identified as carbon dioxide. Your red blood cells take the carbon dioxide waste to your lungs for you to exhale. Red blood cells develop in your body's soft bone tissue, that means bone marrow, and release into your bloodstream after they fully mature, which takes about 7 days. Red blood cells get their bright red color from a protein that allows them to carry oxygen from your lungs and deliver it to other tissues in your body. Red blood cells are microscopic and have the shape of a flat disc or a donut, which round with an indentation in the center. Red blood cells do not have a nucleus like white blood cells, allowing them to change shape and move throughout your body easier. Red blood cells grow in your bone marrow. Bone marrow creates almost all of the cells in your body. Red blood cells contain a protein called hemoglobin, which is responsible for carrying oxygen. Common conditions that affect red blood cells. Anemia. That means your body carries less oxygen than normal and causes your body to feel cold, tired and weak. Blood loss. Blood losses that may loses more blood cells than it can produce. Bone marrow disorder. That means leukemia, lymphomia. Sometimes it may also causes a blood cancer. White blood cells, also known as leukocytes, are responsible for protecting your body from infections. White blood cells are a part of human system White blood cells circulate in your body and respond to injury or illness. White blood cells protect your body against infections. White blood cells travel through your bloodstream and tissues. They locate the site of an infection and act as an army general to notify other white blood cells of their location to help defend your body from an attack of an unknown organisms. White blood cells are in your bloodstreams and travel through your blood vessel walls and tissues to locate the site of an infection. White blood cells account for 1% of your blood. There are more red blood cells in your body than white blood cells. White blood cells formation occurs in the soft tissue inside of your bones, that means bone marrow. Two types of white blood cells. Lymphocytes grow in the thymus gland such as T cells and B cells. In lymph nodes, it produces T cells, and in spleen that produce B cells. White blood cells originate from cells that morph into other cells in the body, that means stem cells, within the soft tissue of your bones. There are 5 types of white blood cells such as neutrophils, lymphocytes, eosinophils, basophils, and monocytes. Neutrophils. They help to protect your body from infections by killing bacteria, fungi, and foreign debris. Lymphocytes. It consists of T cells, natural killer cells, and B cells to protect against viral infection and produce proteins to help you fight infection. Eosinophils. It helps in identifying and destroying parasites, cancer cells, and assists basophils with your allergic response. Basophils produce an allergic response like coughing, sneezing, or a runny nose. Monocytes. It defends against infection by cleaning up damaged cells. Neutrophils, basophils, and eosinophils have similar functions and can be grouped together and called granulocytes. Other types of white blood cells are monocytes and lymphocytes. Platelets, also called thrombocytes, are a tiny component of your blood that help with clotting. Platelets are your body's natural bandage to stop bleeding. Platelets functions to stop bleeding. During an injury, your platelets will cluster together at the site of the wound to act as a plague. Platelets are small colorless fragments of a cell. Platelets form in the shape of a plate. Platelets and white blood 45% total volume and red blood cells 45% total volume. There is about 1 platelet for every 20 red blood cells in your body. Platelets form in the soft tissue of your bones. The larger cells in your bone marrow make platelets. That is called megakaryocytes. Before birth. Blood cell production starts before birth. When you are still in the uterus, it begins in the yolk sac, a structure that surrounds an embryo at the beginning of pregnancy. Toward the end of pregnancy, most blood cell production happens in your bone marrow. There are some milestones in hematopoiesis, such as first, week 3. A type of red blood cells slightly less developed than the red blood cells that get made during adulthood is made. At the second month of first trimester, red blood cells and platelets get made in your liver and spleen. White blood cells get made in your liver, spleen, and thymus, as same as in the third month of first trimesters. But in the 5th month, most blood cell production happens in your bone marrow, the thymus, spleen, and the other limb tissue also make some types of white blood cells. What happens during red blood cell production? Red blood cell production occurs in your bone marrow and hematopoietic stem cells mature into a precursor cell. Each type of blood cells begins as an HHC for red blood cells to eventually form an hematopoietic stem cells becomes a common myeloid progenitor. Red blood cells can be produced in the following stages as it develops. Proerythroblast, erythroblast, normoblast, reticulocyte, and erythrocyte. So erythrocyte is the fully matured red blood cells. An erythroblast becomes an immature blood cells called a reticulocyte. Finally, a reticulocyte develops into a mature red blood cell. What happens during white blood cell production? That means leukopoiesis. Granulocytes such as basophils, eosinophils, and neutrophils get made in your bone marrow, and hematophytic stem cells follows a development path called the myeloid cell line for a granulocytic production. The word myeloid means relating to the bone marrow, where granulocytes get made. For granulocytes to form, an hematophytic stem cells becomes a precursor cells called myeloblast. A myeloblast forms a myelocyte, which later becomes a basophil, eosophil, and neutrophils. In platelet production occurs in a bone marrow, wherein hematophytic stem cells mature into a precursor cell called a megacheiroblast. Megacheiroblast becomes a megachirocyte. That megachirocyte, fragments of the megachirocyte break off that forms the platelets. In general, how long does hematopoiesis take? Red blood cells survive for about 120 days. White blood cells survive from a few hours to a few days. Platelets survive for about 5 to 9 days. That means red blood cells can survive more than other blood cells. Red blood cells produced from bone marrow and go undied at spleen. So spleen called the graveyard of the red blood cells. Thank you for your patience listening.